Good evening and welcome to Keys of Change. Keys to Change is a virtual conversation series where we sit down with local leaders and change makers to talk honestly about housing development and the future of our communities. The goal is of this series is to simply create a space for real dialogue about what's working, what isn't, and how we can build more inclusive, affordable, and thriving neighborhoods across Maryland. I'm your host, Kobe Smith. I'm a realtor here in Maryland and the founder of Chateau Seekers at Keller Williams Capital Properties. Through my work in real estate and community leadership, I see every day how housing impacts opportunity, stability, and long-term wealth. This series is about bringing together policy, community voices, and practical solutions in one conversation. Tonight, I am honored to be joined by Phylicia Porter, Baltimore City Councilmember for District 10. She's born, raised, and educated in Baltimore. She's the Councilwoman. Porter brings a background in public health, community organizing, and advocacy to her work on the City Council. Her leadership focuses on housing, neighborhood revitalization, and ensures that development benefits longtime residents as well as future generations. Tonight, we'll be discussing how Baltimore can revitalize neighborhoods without displacement, how housing and public health intersect, and what community-driven development looks like in practice. Councilwoman Porter, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, of course. Thanks so much for having me, Colby.
Of course, I'll hop right into our first question. What inspired you to enter public service, and how has your perspective evolved since representing South Baltimore in the City Council?
So I started in public service, I would say probably about 10 years ago. I had various issues that were occurring in my community. I really wanted to see change, and I'm from Baltimore, but at the time I was working in DC. So I took that 40-minute MARC train down to DC.
Hmm.
And I began to see the changing of the neighborhood. So as you go to the Baltimore County and Halethorpe, as you go to Prince George's County, New Carrollton, and finally into Washington, D.C., I began to see the change in communities. And I did not want Baltimore to look like it did 30 years ago. I did not want it to look like how many of the communities that we are seeing across the East Coast they're changing in a way. So meaning that our legacy residents aren't able to afford to live in Baltimore, and also homeowners, new first-time homeowners like you and I, when I was young, um, we couldn't purchase a home. So I made sure that I came back and impacted policy in a way where people like me that went to college in Baltimore, wanted to stay in Baltimore, wanted to live in Baltimore, had an opportunity, a true opportunity to thrive in Baltimore through home ownership.
I appreciate that. And I'm actually going to have a question about what it's like as a young professional or a young person to purchase in Baltimore and buy a home in Baltimore, but we'll get to that in a second. So, South Baltimore has seen both revitalization and displacement pressures. How do you balance new development with protecting affordability and legacy residents?
Oh, it's definitely a full-time job. So, one of the accomplishments that I can honestly say about South Baltimore is that not only are we the fastest growing district in the city of Baltimore, but I can also say that we are bringing 200 new homes into the city of Baltimore in my 5 years tenure. And 20% of those homes within each of the project, we got them in Mount Winans, Westport, Cherry Hill, and we also have some vacancies that we are working on in Pigtown. They are affordable housing. So meaning that they are 160, 170, and then some of them as we've grown down into some of the newer developments, they are around about 250. And then you have some that are upwards of 300. But I say that all to say, they are affordable based on kind of where your income level is. But I felt as though a person earning $40,000 could buy a home in my district. And that's
Mhm,
exactly my story. When I was buying a home in my current home now, it was 2019, right before the pandemic.
mhm,
And I was working as a very early careerist, making about 80,000.
mhm,
And I wanted to purchase a home. I didn't want to rent anymore. I rented for 10 years. And I had to get my home to settlement within 45 days. And so, Kobe, you know what that is like. It was a rush.
mhm,
It was a rush to get there within 45 days. But I had an opportunity to have a down payment through the Live Baltimore program. I had a little bit of money saved and I invested in home ownership. And at the time, my house was worth about my house. I paid for my house about $152,000.
mhm,
And now, as the time has gone on, it has appreciated. But I wanted someone like myself that went to college, came back in community,
mhm,
was not made, was making less than six figures and could afford a home.
mhm. So I understand that experience completely. As I'm 25 years old. I'm a Gen Zer. I went to school in Maryland and I noticed that a lot of my classmates and a lot of people I grew up with, they end up going to college somewhere else or even in Maryland and then finding out that they can't necessarily afford to live here.
Yes.
How can city leaders make Baltimore more attractive for young professionals who want to live, work, and invest for here for a long time?
So I will tell you, and this is something that I have been working on probably for since I've been here. We got to
Mhm,
make sure that we are investing in our workforce here in the city of
mhm,
Baltimore and investing in our workforce properly. So that means making sure that we are comparable to Baltimore County and DC.
mhm,
Earlier in the conversation, I mentioned how I was working in DC
mhm,
versus Baltimore
mhm,
because, DC was paying a little bit more. And so I was
mhm,
able to have the income and wages in order to support home ownership.
mhm,
That's one thing. We really have to start investing in how we obtain talent in the city of Baltimore in conjunction with our surrounding jurisdictions. Number two, we have to also make sure that we are providing incentives for folks to live and work within Baltimore. So expanding the Live Baltimore program that we have in the city of Baltimore. That's something that I'm working on with Oriole Stadium, working
mhm,
on with the University of Maryland, because even though we are an Eds and Meds town, we are in District 10. We're surrounded by Raven Stadium and Oriole
mhm,
Stadium. So obviously, I want people to work here at Oriole Stadium, but I also want them
mhm,
to live in the surrounding areas as well. So that's number two, making sure that we expand our incentives for living in places where you work. And
mhm,
number three, and this is something that the council is currently working on, we have to begin to tackle property taxes. I'm just gonna put it out
mhm,
there. We have to begin to tackle property taxes in a way that is substantive for people to actually see change in their bottom line. So what I'm saying is if your house is valued at a certain amount, you're not paying more than 5 to 7% of your
mhm,
actual assessed value of your house.
mhm,
And I'll tell you, that's probably one of the biggest reasons that we are seeing early careerists not moving into Baltimore. But also, and this is something that I really focus on, particularly for our legacy residents are losing their homes related to property taxes as well. The predatory behavior of not paying predatory behavior of
mhm,
investors and lien holders taking those homes of legacy residents that may have
mhm,
fallen behind on their property taxes.
mhm. Okay. I appreciate that was good. So so I actually am a big fan of the Live Baltimore.
Yeah.
They work alongside us with the Urban League a lot of
Mhm.
times, and I also know they have an amazing trolley tour that like
Yes.
people that are interested in moving in to Baltimore can get ride the trolley, see what's out there, see some listings, see all that stuff.
Yep.
So what role do you see local government playing in addressing Baltimore's housing shortage and vacancy challenges?
I see it in a direct way. And so
Mm,
I'm going to name three opportunities where I've seen the council standing in the gap and making sure that we address those issues. So as before I mentioned the property tax, that's
mm,
something that we're tackling this term. So shout out to my colleague and friend Councilwoman Odette Ramos. She has really taken the lead on the property tax issue, and also Vice President Sharon Green Middleton,
mm,
who, she's looking at it from a vantage point of making sure that our legacy residents and our older adults are engaged in the process as well as it relates to
mm,
property taxes. I will also say we have got to really look at the vacants and how they are assessed in the city of Baltimore, and how folks that are purchasing those properties sometimes may not be purchasing at the assessed value.
mm,
So when I talk about that, I mean that you're purchasing a home at auction for $5,000, and the home and the surrounding comps are around about 80, 90,000.
mm,
So, you are again not you're purchasing a property for lesser value, which is totally fine, but making sure that you provide the rehab that is comparable to
mm,
that 80, 90,000, because as you all know this, the comps, one home or a few homes can determine the comps for the particular area. And
mm,
so if we are ever able to see true community revitalization, we've got to really look at it not only from a home by home approach, but
mm,
really truly, and folks say a block by block, but I say a community by community,
mm,
because you'll have different aspects of the community that are valued differently.
mm,
And putting on my public health hat, when you look at the differentiation between neighborhoods within one community, you can really connect it to life expectancy. You
mm,
can connect it to amenities that are associated with the community, and also you can connect it to the wealth, the generational wealth that is attracted and also cultivated in those respective communities as well.
mm, mm. So, what do you believe are the biggest barriers to equitable housing access in Baltimore right now?
Well, that's a loaded question. So, a few things. So I
Mm,
mentioned the property tax before, but I want to highlight, and this is something that I know that Kobe, in your line of work, I know
mm,
that you are actively fighting against predatory behavior of
mm,
spectators that are coming into community, sitting on properties, not
mm,
doing anything with property,
mm,
and then just allowing the property to dilapidate over time. Now, that's a load. I understand as a government official that is a loaded process, because I understand the issues and the barriers related to permitting. That can
mm,
sometimes be the
mm,
case. I understand the issues related to financing.
mm,
Financing different projects. So I understand all of those issues. What I am saying is those that are knowingly targeting Baltimore and sitting on multiple properties at a time and not
mm,
doing anything with it. We as the city have an opportunity to step in through the MREM process. While I respect that it's gone down from 24 months to 9 months, nine
mm,
months is still way too long.
mm,
We have to begin to push that housing first initiative now, because it's connected to so many issues, whether it be
mm,
education, whether it be health, whether it be employment as well. Number three, we need folks to talk more to us. So, and
mm,
I'm gonna say that we need folks to talk more to us when we are looking at our permitting infrastructure. You know, I'm a public health expert. I do not know the intricacies of what it takes to bring a house from a shell to a
mm,
rehab to actual home ownership.
mm,
And this is really kind of what I love to do as far as community participatory engagement, is
mm,
talking to actual experts in the field and not relying on my own understanding.
mm,
So there are ways that you all know your industry that we as policymakers do not know. And so I have strategically throughout the district, I have set up various advisories. I have a real estate advisory where
mm,
I've taken folks around the district and I say, this is South Baltimore.
Exactly.
How, Charm City buyers came and did a tour in South Baltimore.
Hmm.
My Under my leadership in Live Baltimore, we added Cherry Hill and Mount Winans to the trolley tour. So like there are ways that we can influence the process, but we need a talk back church. We
Hmm.
need a talk back church so that we truly understand how our policies are impacting you all, but also if there are any loopholes that we are missing for the direct or indirect consequences.
Hmm. Hmm. So, how can a city or a state, a partnership, strengthen programs for, I'm flipping to first-time home buyers, renters, and small landlords in underserved communities?
Oh, it can be very beneficial.
Hmm.
So, but it also, I'm gonna add to that. It also has to have the influence of community and the local representative to not only push projects that truly impact community. So, for example, when we're talking about home ownership in the district, the amount of proposals that I get every single day is like, Phylicia, I want to build a condo. I want to go to
Hmm.
condominiums in South Baltimore. Like I actually had one guy when I first came, he was from Taiwan and he
Hmm.
wanted to build he likened it to the Dubai of Baltimore. And as a Baltimorean myself, I was like, wait, what?
Exactly.
Like what? No, 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 no. So that's what I'm saying. Having an active local representative to be able to direct the projects in a
Hmm.
way that keeps the community fabric, but also allows for true economic development. And when I say true economic development, I mean true economic development for all facets of income levels. So
Hmm.
it's not just your high earners, it's for your early careers, it's for your older adults, and it's also for the influx of people that want to come to Baltimore. And
Hmm.
so having that very hands-on approach, that's going to help that local and state level partnership
Hmm.
because your local representative knows the fabric of community. And so your state level representatives, while they may bring in the program, that intergovernmental conversation and that dialogue that
Hmm.
happens, it's supposed to happen iteratively, not just one time.
Hmm.
That's going to allow the partnership to be that much more fruitful and also truly representative of community.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So you have experience in public health, and public health ties nicely with the economy, with real estate market. Um, how do housing conditions and stability tie into community health outcomes?
Oh my gosh, it's directly connected. And
Mhm.
I would probably say it's one of the, I would say top three social
Mhm.
drivers of health. And I'm going to explain that.
Mhm.
When we talk about social drivers of health, people look at income education, and also occupation. So they
Mhm.
look at all three of those things. One of the key areas that connects all of those
Mhm.
is housing.
Mhm.
You know, and I often remind people, if you don't have stable housing, your mental health is impacted.
Mhm.
When we look at the behavioral health economy that we're seeing in Baltimore as it relates to sober living houses, recovery homes, and also just homes in general for persons that are living in active recovery, you're
Mhm.
going to need a stable place to stay. You're going to
Mhm.
need that environment for you to actually get healthy. When you
Mhm.
don't have that environment, it's a cascading effect
Mhm.
negatively. It's a cascading effect to negative outcomes that people spiral into relapse.
Mhm.
They often live in unhoused conditions,
Mhm.
in unsanitary conditions. And also, when we're looking at the upward mobility perspective, if they don't have that connection to stable housing, they're never going to get on the pathway to true recovery and
Mhm.
true positive quality of life. Mhm.
Mhm. That completely makes sense. And I'd actually add to that, like being able to walk around your home, go
Yeah.
walking outside, seeing trees, hearing birds
Yeah.
and all that stuff. That stuff really impacts like your
Mhm.
how you feel about a community and the
Yeah.
community value and all that stuff. So small developers are often closest to the community. They serve, but face big barriers.
Mhm.
How can the city and state better support them as part of the housing solution?
So, so let me make sure I understand your question.
Hmm.
You're asking if how we as city and state professionals and government leaders can
Hmm.
reduce the barriers
Yes.
for
So
folks.
yeah.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. So one, we can make sure that we have a streamlined approach to for your industry, a streamlined
Hmm.
approach to permitting, a streamlined approach to purchasing homes,
Hmm.
but also on the back end, we need to have a streamlined approach to investigation and enforcement.
Hmm.
So there are some folks out here that are not doing right, that
Hmm.
are not doing proper renovations. But also, like I mentioned before, we as a city and state, we have an opportunity to impact our salaries and our wages and
Hmm.
also our jobs within the city and state in comparison to surrounding jurisdictions. We have that power. It's not moving as fast as I would like, but we have that power to change it. Also, when we're looking at how the economy, how the federal economy, as it relates to subsidized housing, as it relates to
Hmm.
concentrated poverty, we again have that power for as policymakers to make that change. So I'm talking about making sure that we truly have mixed use housing
Hmm.
development, not just having concentrated poverty as what we've seen in the past. Baltimore is home to redlining. And
Hmm.
so we still have remnants of that policy that are permeating through Baltimore to this day. When
Hmm.
you look at some of the ways that housing has been restricted to particular areas, whether it be through income restrictive covenants, that's another issue that we have to deal with,
Hmm.
whether it's really looking at how HOA fees can really box out people, like box out types of people.
Hmm.
You know, we all have the policy to do that, and those are some of the barriers that I think are inhibiting how we do policy now.
Hmm.
Last but certainly not least, our zoning code
Hmm.
is inherently not, how can I put this? Because we are on a podcast. Our zo- Councilman Ryan Dorsey, he has really educated me on the racist, segregationist
Hmm.
aspects of how our zoning code is developed. And so really understanding all of those facets
Hmm.
in relation to other amenities like transportation, like health, like environment, you
Hmm.
realize the by design nature of the barriers that we exist. And it is not a simple just taking a policy away and you will have direct housing to person to communities pipelines. It's so complex about the
Hmm.
policies and so complex in aspects of one, just overt racism that
Hmm.
have been permeated and that are embedded in our policies today.
Exactly. And you also mentioned people sitting on houses, well, people that are sitting on houses to intentionally let them get dilapidated and all that
Yeah.
stuff. That also affects appraisals, which
Oh yeah.
affects financing and home
Yes.
prices, and
Yes.
that really messes up a community.
I'll never
So,
forget when I first came in, I had a gentleman tell me, he said, Phylicia, yeah, that is land
hmm.
banking. He said, Phylicia, I'm holding 100 properties for my grandkids. And I
Hmm.
said, wow. Ooh. Like, just
Hmm.
that mentality and the audacity to share that with an
Exactly.
elected, like it was
Oh wow.
crazy. It was
Hmm.
crazy. But I appreciated his honesty.
Hmm.
But he also he now gets cited every
Hmm.
single month from my office.
Oh yeah.
So
Hmm.
like we ain't gonna let you off that quick,
Hmm.
And so, but it allowed me to understand the wealth building generation that
Hmm.
people hold on to dilapidated
Hmm.
properties and allow the appreciation over time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, what does community-driven development mean to you, and how can residents have a stronger voice in shaping their neighborhood?
most definitely. And so I really do appreciate that question because community driven development for me is not just in engaging with community at the onset of the process. So when a development comes into the district, I'm having conversations with community organizations. I'm having conversations with CDCs. As you heard before, I have a short list of
Hmm.
realtors that have been engaged in the district so far. And
Hmm.
then also I put out an all call to realtors that want to be attached to the real estate listserv that we have
Hmm.
in the district. And so I use those partnerships. And so I use it from an industry perspective. What are we looking at? How the property can progress and actually value over time.
Hmm.
When I do these projects, I'm not just looking for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm really looking for the very longevity approach of 20 to 30 years down the line. Because when we're
Hmm.
looking at FHA, you're looking at like a 20 to 30-year mortgage. And
Hmm.
so I'm really looking at that aspect. So when I think about community driven development, it's not just talking with you at the beginning of the process. I'm talking to you iteratively, maybe 6 months to a year, and
Hmm.
even to project completion. In some instances, I'm actually strongly encouraging the developer to work with community. And
Hmm.
until you engage with community, you don't get a letter of support for any zoning changes from me.
Hmm.
You,
Hmm.
you know, so it's definitely a bi-directional relationship that
Hmm.
includes community, and it does not include me moving forward within the process unless we have community support.
Hmm. Hmm. When do you sleep?
Yeah.
It seems like
Uh,
you got a lot on the plate.
I do, but I do, and let me tell you, and I just want to, because here's the thing, I do work a lot. I do
Hmm.
love this. I mean, before this, I was a public health scientist. I've managed over 100 individuals, six multidisciplinary teams, and so
Hmm.
my brain works in a way that I'm tracking.
Hmm.
I may not say it then, but I'm tracking
Hmm.
to, outcomes, but also I've just gained an appreciation
Hmm.
for being a legacy catalyst and
Hmm.
guard for my communities.
That's good.
So I'll say, and when I say that legacy guard for my communities,
Hmm.
there are people that knowingly produce or develop a project that they
Hmm.
know is against their foundation and core. So I am Baltimore through and through. I've been born and raised and educated here. And
Hmm.
so I'm bringing back the brilliance that I've gotten all across the nation to my city. And I actually just said this earlier this week. While folks look at all the success of
Hmm.
what's happening around Baltimore, some folks really do not understand the barriers and the
Hmm.
blocks that we are, some of us are blocking from
Hmm.
happening to ensure that people can stay here in Baltimore. And I can actively say that in my 5 years of serving, blocking particular projects that were not in line with community, that were not in
Hmm.
line with the generational fabric of
Hmm.
of the community already existing here. I can honestly say that we blocked that
Hmm.
pretty good. We blocked that pretty carefully. Yes.
Noted. So if you're a developer in
Yes.
District 10,
Oh
you
yeah.
better be community focused.
Almost
Hmm.
definitely. And here's the thing, and this is something that I think, this is something that's a myth that
Hmm.
folks when they come into Baltimore City, I want you to make money. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that you can't make money.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
cash rules everything around me.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
I know how important it is for small to mid-level developers to make money. What
Hmm.
I am asking is for you to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Do it the right way that includes community, that includes the generational fabric of Baltimore.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
So
just like your cookie cutter, like, no, we want
exactly.
something that will engage and an impact. Yeah.
Hmm. So my final question before we open the floor real quick
Yeah.
for three questions is when you envision Baltimore 10 years from now,
Yeah.
what kind of housing ecosystem do you hope to see, and what gives you hope that this can happen?
Yeah, so I will tell you, and this is something that the council is grappling with right now, the
Hmm.
housing bills. The housing bills that have been coming through Baltimore. I
Hmm.
want to see housing that matches the community, the community fabric of Baltimore. So whether it be Reservoir Hill, whether it be Cherry Hill, whether it be
Mhm.
Bolton Hill, you
Mhm.
have the particular fabric of these neighborhoods. Number two, in 10 years, I want our government resources to marry and
Mhm.
be productive to help engage and
Mhm.
produce high quality housing in the city of Baltimore.
Yeah.
So the way that my brain thinks, you know, it's not just a revamp of the permit system. We need to revamp how we are doing permits in the city of Baltimore. So not just the
Mhm.
system in general, but how we are producing permits and the outcomes related to it, whether it be better inspection on the back
Mhm.
end. You know, we need higher quality government services that match the housing need that we're seeing in the city of Baltimore. So that means we need more people to be in our fire department for use and occupancy permits. We
Mhm.
need more folks and more engineers within DPW. You know, when we're talking about those types of site plan engineering that we need to see in community. And
Mhm.
so I am envisioning a ecosystem that is maximally produced,
Mhm.
but number two, we have a system that is for us and by us so that we can produce the housing needs that we need moving forward. We are not DC, we are not Baltimore County. We are Baltimore City and
Mhm.
being proud of our government infrastructure in order to make that happen. And I believe that can happen. I truly do believe that can happen. And the way that I'm developing the Public Health and Environment Committee
Mhm.
is directly related to that very vision.
That's good. Well,
Mhm.
Councilwoman Porter, thank you again for taking
Of
the time for
course.
joining us and sharing your perspective. These conversations matter because housing impacts every part of our lives, from opportunity to stability to health,
Mhm.
safety, and long-term growth. Now, I'd like to open the floor to our audience. If you have any
Yes.
questions, please drop it in the chat. I'll select up to three and ask them directly for you.
And I'm looking at the chat. Can I just take a moment to answer
Yeah,
these?
go ahead. Yeah.
Perfect. So if this is Cherie, I love it. Yes, there
Yes,
is
it
this.
is.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello. So there are homes and blocks in District 10 that are available. What we can do is we can reach out to DHCD and get you that list particularly for District 10. If you want to send a note to the office, then we can go from there. All
Perfect.
right.
Will
And
do.
then and air quality. Miss Bass Myers, could you explain that question real quick?
When you were talking about how food disparities affect your health, and
Yes, of
I was
course.
just commenting that it air quality also
Most
directly
definitely.
affects your health, and so many
Most definitely.
other things that are in your district that I know
Yes.
you are working on. So
Yes.
kudos to you. You are
Keep me in
she's
prayer.
amazing. She has a cape on under that jacket. Don't let her fool you.
Keep me in prayer, please.
All the time.
Please. I'm
Thank
on
you.
like I'm on like 9 prayer lists.
Thank
Okay.
you for being here. Thank you for this.
Of course. And Cynthia, you're absolutely right. Does Baltimore learn from the experiments that have already taken place? Absolutely. So, Kobe, may I just take a point of privilege to share a story?
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
Cynthia, I actually grew up in Edmondson Village, and so when the Uplands project first came to that area, that was when I was like a teenager, and so I began to see how Uplands changed over time, but also how Uplands more than likely did not provide the housing stock that was needed at that particular time in the fashion where it was supposed to. So the expedient nature of those houses, the income level of those houses, but also the phased building of those houses. They're still building those houses 20 years later. The second one is the EBDI project. I went to Institute of Notre Dame over in East Baltimore, and so I had a firsthand account of the EBDI properties and how the homes actually were built but folks could not get back into their properties once the homes were built because of various reasons. Those are the types of issues that I do not want to happen in District 10. Yeah. And Jerome. What specific? Yes. It's gonna be. And what about sweat equity? Yeah, true. So, two things. Specific incentives or programs are being developed to allow individuals who are not high earners to compete in the home ownership arena. That's exactly what Live Baltimore is doing. So, Live Baltimore, if you want to play it right, you can get about 30,000 in down payment assistance from Live Baltimore. And what I was saying before, we opened up two of those communities. So previously, before my tenure, we did not have any communities in South Baltimore, and it was a race against time because if you have those programs that are not in communities, you have an influx of the luxury apartment space without having the home ownership space connected to it. And so that's one that I specifically worked on. I was not a high earner when I bought my home, and I know particular individuals in community that I have connected with to Live Baltimore.
Mhm.
Also, sweat equity opportunities. I would probably say that District 10 has about 50 to 60 homes related to Habitat for Humanity. And so we currently have some in Curtis Bay, we have some in Brooklyn, and also we have some in Pigtown as well. And so that sweat equity opportunities, I definitely think you're onto something. I believe that we need to expand it. It just needs to be in the proper way as well. Yeah. And what discounts or incentives would help them expand their properties when the homes are next to? So, what discounts or incentives are there that would help individuals to expand their properties when their homes are next to dilapidated homes? I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't know. I can't think of one incentive next to a dilapidated home. But again, housing is not my area of expertise. But I can definitely, Colby, let me take that back to some housing
Mhm.
experts, and then we'll be able to send it back out to you all so that you have it for your listserv.
And
Yeah.
that would be
Because
great because
I don't
that's a
know one
great
off the top
question.
of my head. Yeah, I don't, and
Mhm.
it's so crazy because you're absolutely right. What we're seeing in some of the block by block set
Mhm.
strategy, you have people that live in homes next to dilapidated houses,
Mhm.
and what we see is that the dilapidated home is actually impacting their
Mhm.
housing infrastructure as well. So yeah, I don't know a good answer to that, but I'll definitely find out for sure.
Okay. Fine. Well, we truly appreciate everyone who joined us tonight. If you found this conversation valuable, the full recording will be shared on YouTube as part of the Keys to Change series. And before we wrap up, I also want to invite everyone to an upcoming event I'm hosting on March 21st at 1 p.m., a real estate seminar and wine tasting focused on buying a home with student loan debt.
Mm,
Yeah, I know.
yes.
If you're interested in learning more, I'll drop the link in the chat and include it in a follow-up email. Keys to Change is about thoughtful dialogue and practical solutions, and your participation helps make that possible. Councilwoman Porter, thank you again for your leadership and for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Talk soon, everyone.